I'd like to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded. I would ask if there's anyone recording in the audience. Seeing none, would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't believe we have any citizens' comments. We do have special recognitions tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to share with you Jeff Burke. He's a physics teacher at our high school in the science department. And he has volunteered to work with the Department of Education on what are known as the MPACs. They are performance-based assessments, and they're going to be piloting them next year. As you know, earlier, for this past school year, we participated in a pilot of the survey and was able to give our feedback to DESE to really help guide what will be the final document. So I just wanted to recognize Jeff for doing this on a volunteer basis. I think it speaks well of Auburn and allows us to have a voice in what will be a final product at some point in the future.
Any comments? I would also like to thank Jeff for going above and beyond. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Now move on to the superintendent's report. Oh, I'm sorry, did I go out of order?
That's okay.
Out of order. Seek approval of the minutes of the June 19th meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's vote.
Great. Wanted to make you aware, this will actually be our third summer to hire summer interns. They're going to work this year in both our special education and our technology programs. And as has been reported over the past couple of years to you, it's been a very successful program. The students go through an interview process, they train, they have weekly meetings, so it's really been great. So I just wanted to make you aware that that is ongoing again this year. It's a great way for students to learn some important job skills for beyond high school. Next, the Model Bullying Prevention and Intervention Plan. As you know, we first created it back a couple of years ago and was approved. I included this in here for you because they've made some updates to it that reflect the changes to the anti-bullying statute. This was actually just updated in this school year, in April of 2014. So I wanted you to be aware that there'll be a team of us that will be revising this, and it's my goal to bring it to you for the August 6th meeting. I wanted you to know that we are working on that. The update on student discipline, we've been actually talking about this for a couple of years as well. It was actually in the Acts of 2012, Chapter 222, and it takes effect, or it took effect, July 1st of 2014. And it really puts some fairly substantial restrictions on suspensions and expulsions for students. It still leaves in place any ones that involve weapons and drugs, certainly. There's limits on that as well. But it really requires us, in brief, to continue to provide an education for students. Now, last school year, we implemented an in-school suspension teacher at the high school, which has gone well, so we're able to provide some support through that. I'll continue to keep you apprised, but I just wanted to remind you that it now is in effect. We've been talking about it for a couple of years, and I'll keep you monitored in terms of the oversight and any implications that we may be seeing financially especially. This is one, if you'll recall, that a couple of school districts and you as a committee had me send a letter in support as well, expressing that this really was creating an additional unfunded mandate. Because if there's a requirement to continue to provide education outside of Auburn, that obviously comes at a cost. So, but until now, we've not heard anything back on that. It is our responsibility. We actually, the Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative, the quarterly report, in looking back through the minutes, the report from October 1st to December 31st, it was inadvertently left out of the packet in January, so it is here for you. I would be happy to answer any questions. You've actually approved both the third and fourth quarter reports that would have built upon this one. But it is my recommendation that you just, really, you don't even need to approve it, you're just voting that you have accepted it as the report is presented.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
There's a vote.
The 10 Swanson Road updates, they were planning to begin the parking lot expansion. It's been delayed very slightly. Mr. Fahey and Mr. Ringard are working with them on that. The playground installation has begun, and lots of exciting things happened. We made the staff at the middle school aware because with the work in the parking lot, it's really going to limit their availability to the school. We shared that with them well before the close of school, so they were able to take materials, and they've actually had a couple of weeks since school closed to be in there as well. And they're still on target to have it finished by August 15th, so that will be great news. Doubling the size, quite honestly,
Wow.
of that. The Senate bond bill, I had shared with you some information via email towards the end of June. And in that large bond bill, there was $38 million that was being recommended by the Senate for technology upgrades and infrastructure. If you read through that, and I probably cut and pasted a portion of that for you, it was actually part of a multi-million into the hundreds of millions of dollars. So it really was a request by the Senate, but unless acted upon and funded, we may not see that, but I thought it was important that I shared with you the letter that I sent to Senator Moore to seek his support of that, especially with the park testing coming up and that having been an assessment built to be done on the computers or iPads online. It only makes sense that we would put our students in the best position by providing it to them that way. So, and that's going to require money. So I'll keep you updated on that process too.
Now move on to unfinished business.
So the accelerated repair program, as we reported to you at the last meeting, and then Mr. Gray and I went to the Board of Selectmen's meeting shortly thereafter, I think it was the Monday after our meeting. Auburn has been accepted for both Bryn Mawr and Auburn Middle School into the accelerated repair. A new roof at the Bryn Mawr School, a new roof and a boiler at Auburn Middle School. We're anticipating very roughly that probably in total, the costs for these would be somewhere in the vicinity of about $1.8 million, somewhere in that amount. With MSBA support, they would be picking up approximately half of that cost, potentially up to half of that cost. So $800,000 it could come into savings to the town. As I shared with you at the last meeting, there are steps that need to be followed along the way. And one of the steps is, and I included for you in the packet here, some of the information that needed to be sent to Mr. McCarthy. I had shared it last time too. But we need to identify where will we come up with funding to provide for the OPM, the Owner's Project Manager, and the schematic design for these three projects. Now, as Mr. Gray noted at the last meeting, the OPM cost is a flat fee of $15,000. They have pre-qualified MSBA, different OPMs, will be randomly assigned one of them. What's the variable cost is for the schematic design, and that's really going to require, once the OPM comes out, to do an analysis of the depth and the amount of work that needs to be done in terms of the roof replacements as well as the boiler replacement. And Mr. Gray found out in speaking with MSBA that's likely to be in the vicinity in total, the $15,000 plus this, to be about $55,000. So there are different options. We could have gone back to town meeting and asked them either for this money outright at the fall special town meeting. We could have asked for money to be reappropriated that had been sent from other directions. But what we tried to do, Mr. Barber and Mr. Fahey and I, was look at our available building rental and revolving accounts, including school choice, to see if we could fund that internally, thus saving what's already been identified in CIP and not asking the town for additional money, even though they'll see ultimately an $800,000 savings. So what I have for you that we distributed tonight, we looked at in total, anticipating that the Bryn Mawr roof, and again, these are rough numbers, but we wanted to come up with a formula. If that roof costs approximately $600,000, if the middle school roof costs approximately $1 million, and if the middle school boiler costs approximately $200,000, apportioning that out, that means that 31% of the cost would be borne by Bryn Mawr School and 69% by Auburn Middle. So it's our recommendation tonight to you that you approve the motion that we have here to utilize the Bryn Mawr and Auburn Middle School building rental and revolving accounts, including school choice, to pay for the OPM schematic design. I had a conversation with our liaison, Kevin Sullivan, to MSBA, before Mr. Barber and Mr. Fahey and I met, and he said that that would be a fine use of that. It would require school committee approval only. Plus, it helps us with our timelines, because we need to get this information into them. I believe this information needs to be into them by September 4th, with this decision by August 3rd. So that is our recommendation, and I am hopeful that you will support it.
I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve it, but, okay.
I'll
Do I have a
second.
second? Have a second, Wayne?
Okay, so basically what, I know what it said, but I want to just clarify it, is that we are going to use this money through our budget process and not go to town meeting or the residents of the town for more money.
Correct,
Thank you.
correct.
Any other questions, comments?
Before you vote, I just want to add one more thing, if I may, excuse me.
Sure.
We need to, and I know Mr. Gray shared this, and I just want to reiterate it too before you take this vote. I still recommend it, but as we know throughout this process, we can stop this at any point if we don't feel that we should go forward with it. Because the reality of it is, and we think the numbers that I've shared with you are pretty close ballpark. Mr. Fahey has done some work around this. But if the middle school roof, if everything came in at double what I've said, we probably don't have enough funding to do these. So then we'd have to make some decisions. So there's the risk that we're spending this money to determine what it's going to cost. But if we don't do step one, we can't reap the rewards in step two. So I still do recommend it.
And
Jeff.
basically, just so I understand, it'd be like $500,000 that we would save the taxpayers of Auburn, per se,
More than that.
for this $55,000
We'd save,
potential investment.
I'm guessing about $800,000.
$800,000, okay.
If our estimates are right.
That's what we would save, so we're not splitting that cost, we would save $800,000.
Correct. The town would save $800 because MSBA would be picking that cost up, the 50%. And these are repairs, as Mr. Fahey said, and we all well know how in touch he is with the condition of all of our buildings and keeps them in the best shape possible. But even, Bryn Mawr School and Auburn Middle School, they're both in the 50 to 60-year-old range, and they've made repairs on them, but they're at the point that they need replacements. So we think this is very wise money to spend to reap what could be a huge reward for the town.
Well,
Go ahead, Wayne.
the other thing is if you don't know if this is going to get this chance again. And if we
Absolutely,
blow it now, you're going to save $800,000, it's a no-brainer,
right,
if you
right.
ask me.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
Before I take the vote on the discussion, could you just share with the taxpayers and the people at home where this money's coming from and how it's not going to affect education? And we haven't been looking at any layoffs, and
Right.
I just want to make that clear.
So-
If you could put that.
Absolutely. As everyone knows, over the past several years, and I can speak only to the 6 that I've been here, or now starting 7th, as a committee, you and our team has recommended along the way, let's not yet spend some of this CIP money that's been appropriated until these decisions were made. The first one being, will the town support a new middle school? And they generously did support that. Secondly, would we be able to reuse Auburn Middle School? And the master plan team has recommended that, and the school committee approved it. So with those decisions being made, we now know that in all likelihood, once all these transitions happen, Julia Bancroft and Mary D. will no longer be needed as educational facilities. So we held off on putting money into our buildings, we kept them safe, but we reserved our CIP money in the hopes that we'd be able to do major renovations to 10 Swanson Road, which is at the tune of about $1.8 million. Town meeting reappropriated this past spring. So we'd then be looking to, we've got some monies appropriated by town meeting. We'd be looking to have them reappropriate some other CIP monies already been approved, and to use it for now to get the 2 other remaining buildings upgraded in pretty substantial ways. So it would not affect our operating budget. would not affect our staffing. This is CIP money that we've been very judicious in spending or not spending. So I think it's a credit to the committee, certainly to Mr. Fahey, and the whole team in making these decisions.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
I'm not trying to make you work any
Sure.
harder tonight. I just want the
That's
people
great.
at home to understand where the money's coming from, and maybe they didn't see the last 2 or 3 meetings,
Right.
and this is the one that they're
No, it's
tuning
good.
in on, and just
Yep.
so they know it's not hurting education whatsoever. It's helping it greatly.
Absolutely.
Any other
I
questions,
do have
comments?
one question.
Yes.
It says here that some of the money's coming from the school choice.
Yes.
How did we use those funds in the past?
We actually have used them as offsets in the budget, so that's another way we try to reduce the budget. But at the end of the budget cycle, the school committee added 5 additional spots. And we always try to reserve some money in the school choice account. We use a large bulk of it for offsets to reduce the operating, but we save some in case any emergencies similar to this would come up. And those would always go before school committee for your approval to spend.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other comments? Okay. We'll take it to a vote.
Aye.
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 Great.
It's a vote.
Thank you very much. The next item, and this is really just on there, there's no time sensitivity to it, but if you do decide at some point to do the tune-up and tool-up from MASC, we can just let myself and Mrs. Ottner know, and we will get that coordinated prior to a meeting sometime this fall or so. The next item we shared at the last meeting, the joint school committee superintendent conference in November. If you've not yet let Mrs. Ottner know if you'd like to attend that, it's November 5th to the 9th. It has topics on, conference sessions on a variety of pertinent topics. We found it to be interesting in the past, and if we register you prior to July 15th, we actually save $100 per registrant. So do let us know if you want to attend that. You're all set. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I understand the school system pays the registration fee?
Correct, and this is actually part of the budget for school committee member dues and conferences.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Because I was planning on attending, I wasn't
good.
sure about how to go about
Yep.
arranging it.
so if you just let Mrs. Ottner know too,
Okay.
and we will get you registered for that and take care of that all with a purchase order.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
They do that all the time.
Jeff?
I'd just
They do
like
what?
to
They
say
pay for the
that
hotel room, too.
They do?
it is excellent if people get a chance to attend it, and it does cover the cost of your stay and in the classes.
Oh,
And it's well worth going, and you're really mandated to take 40 hours of training as a new school committee member, and you can get it all done that week.
oh,
And it really is excellent, especially networking, meeting other committee members and superintendents. So I highly encourage, new members to attend if you can.
Wade?
I would just like to echo Jeff's thing on that, because I've been going there for many, many, many years, and it is very helpful for new school committee members and all.
Yes.
Everything, every year there's different laws
Yeah.
and things coming up that we need to know about, and it's very, very good to be there, to go. Very knowledgeable.
Thank you.
The next item, school building committee, we actually have an SBC meeting on Tuesday, the 15th. The master plan team has actually been postponed until August 5th. We really don't have much updates to report on that. But I did want to let you know, I had shared at one of the recent meetings that there had been a bid protest regarding the masonry contract for Lighthouse. And as I had shared with you, we had numerous conferences with the town's legal counsel on that. The protest had come from the, I forget what the name of it is, but a Fair Labor Board against Lighthouse. The SBC at its latest meeting on June 17th, after much deliberation, decided to continue to award the contract to Lighthouse. The Attorney General's office denied the protest to the Fair Labor Division Business and Labor Bureau. So the contract is being executed with Lighthouse, and there'll be no delay in the project. I wanted people to be aware of that. Our new hire listing, as you can see, there are far fewer TBDs to be determined. The principals and their teams have really done an outstanding job on bringing on board a number of new candidates, and all of them I have the opportunity to meet with, and it is truly one of my favorite things to do, in meeting with the newest members of our team. It's always hard to let those who retire or choose to move on go, but it's also exciting to bring on new people too. So a lot of great candidates, a lot of great candidates.
I would like to just thank the retirees. I probably did at the last meeting and maybe the one before that, but for their years of service, I just can't say enough about how grateful I am, and some of them have taught my children even very recently, like this year, and I know how tough the job can be, and to carry it out for that many years and maintain your patience. And my children were sad to see their teachers leave at the end of the year, and it's kind of the end of the road for them. And again, I just want to thank them.
Nice, thanks.
Wayne?
I'd like to say basically the same thing you said, but I would like to know if you send a letter out from the board, from the committee itself, thanking them for their service and their time.
I've made a note here. We have done it in the past on behalf of the committee,
Yeah.
but I think we'll draft ones and bring them to the August 6th meeting and allow each of you to sign those. I think it's even more personal, so we'll have
Okay,
that ready
thank
for the
you.
next
Oh,
meeting.
that would
Sorry,
be
dear
nice.
Wayne.
Yeah.
That'd be real
That's
good.
great. Yep.
Okay, we now move on to new business.
So the next, or the piece of new business is, Mr. Laurie has submitted his letter of resignation effective September 1st.
Oh,
Yes. As you can tell by the way I'm dressed tonight, this will be the first meeting I've ever been in without a suit and tie. Between my personal life and my professional life, it looks like our house is sold in Auburn. We're going to be breaking ground in August, dealing with building a new house, and as busy I am at work, it's not fair to you as a committee. It's not fair to our kids in the district, the people who I'm so thankful for that put me in this position to advocate for our children in our district. So for those reasons, I think it's important that you have someone in place at the start of the school year, if possible, to really get on board with the budget as you move forward. I know how important the business of the school committee is, and not being able to devote the time that's necessary would be truly something that I can't live with. So if I can't do it 110%, there are people out there that want to do it 110%, and they need that opportunity. So I thank, as my resignation letter states, I thank past and present committee members. I thank Dr. Brunel and her entire staff, Elaine. It's been truly an honor, a very gratifying experience, one I'll cherish, I'll never forget. And I thank, like again, the voters of Auburn for this phenomenal opportunity. I've learned so much, and it is with a very heavy heart that I announced that my next meeting will be my last.
Okay. Should I entertain a motion to allow Mr. Laurie to leave the board? I'll save my kind and harsh words for when you leave officially, but right now I will say very well said, and we are going to miss you, but we'll save it for the end of the line.
That's fine.
Any comments for now? Okay.
I did just want to include in here, there is a process guided by Mass General Law in terms of how a vacancy on any board that consists of 2 or more members, how it should be filled. And what I've drafted and included in the packet for you is a memo to Doreen Goodrich, Chairperson of the Board of Selectmen, from George as our chairperson, notifying them officially. We'll have to submit this letter to Ellen Gabry, Town Clerk, in order to make it official. But notifying them that this letter has been received, and per MGL Chapter 1, Section, Chapter 41, Section 11, it will be a vote of the 4 remaining members and the Board of Selectmen to determine the replacement for Mr. Laurie. And the person selected would be appointed through May, when there's a next town election. So it's only an appointment through the next election. So with your approval of this draft letter, and I'm obviously happy to change it in any way, what I would anticipate us doing is getting this out to Town Hall tomorrow. That way it could be included in the packet for Board of Selectmen. That tomorrow, Mrs. Zotner and I would draft press releases that we'd send to the Auburn Mass Daily, Auburn News, the local cable. We'd send an email out to our students' families too, alerting them to the fact that there is an opening. And we had selected August 5th as a deadline. I believe the goal would be to have the person ready to join you as a committee on September 3rd, which is our meeting after August 6th. In speaking with Town Manager Jacobs, said the Board of Selectmen's next meeting, they've taken a little bit of a break after this meeting, is August 11th. So perhaps, as I suggested in here, if we met before their 7 o'clock meeting, say at 6 or 6:15, if there's only one person, there's really, I mean, you can certainly interview, but if there are more than one, you may want to ask the candidates questions before you take a vote. So it would be of the 4 school committee and the 5 Board of Selectmen members. So this is my recommendation, and if you are in agreement with it, we will have Mr. Scobie just initial, and we will send it off.
Are we looking for a vote on that?
We really don't need this. I would think, and I'm not sure if this is just a formality, and I know you don't want to do this, but you may want to just accept Mr. Laurie's resignation in the form of the vote. And I don't know if it's required, but, and I know, so I suppose if you don't
See
accept
what you
it.
started?
Well, I would entertain a motion to accept Mr. Laurie's resignation.
Oh, I'll reluctantly second that.
No, I still need the first.
Yeah.
First,
Do I have a second? He really wants to go.
Not that I want to.
Auburn's loss, I'll second it.
Yeah.
Any comments?
Not at this time.
No, not at this time. Just a thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote.
Great.
With tears.
Yeah.
All right.
These are, this item here, I know that we have just only begun, and Mr. Barber will be wondering why I'm even asking this on July 9th, but it's actually time to start thinking about any goals. We've just begun FY15, but for FY16, that, quite honestly, I think it's going to be probably the most interesting budget that we'll be putting together, because we're going to need to be hopeful that we'll have 2 schools that we'll no longer be using, but we won't know. And we'll be hopeful that the middle school will be open, but we're be opening a 100,000 square foot building as compared to the 51,000 square foot there. So there are going to be some adjustments that we'll need to make, but I'm confident the leadership team and Mr. Barber and I will, everyone will do a good job with it. But as you think of things, we'll keep this on the agenda for the next several meetings, because it will be November before we know it, and that's when we'll come to present the first round of the budget to you. So if you have ideas, please feel free to bring them up at any time.
I have a general question right now concerning facilities. Obviously, the number of students isn't going to change, so the number of teachers will remain the same. As far as facilities go, facilities management, has Mr. Fahey indicated that we may need more staffing?
That's, one of a real preliminary discussion. I think that if we were not going to be closing, or projecting that we'll potentially be closing JB and Mary D, those staff could be reassigned. But I also think that there's a very strong possibility that we may need some more staff, because we're adding on a building. We'll essentially be taking off 2 buildings that equate to about 56,000 square feet, but we're replacing it with a building that's almost 100, I think it's 100,395 square feet. It's one that's far larger, so we'll have to think about that.
And possible training or professional development to operate some of the systems?
Yep, we actually, in our construction meeting today, that's one of the items that members of the group were tasked with to, as part of our mass chips, they have to come up with a manual for operating all the systems and come up with a professional development program around that, so that's in the works as well.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. And the next item is, this is an annual appointment that you make. The bylaws of the Southern Worcester County Collaborative requires that a representative from each of the member towns sends a member to serve on the board. It has been me who has served in that capacity since I've assumed the role of superintendent. It's my recommendation that I continue, and I will say of all of the towns, it's the superintendent from every community that serves on this board.
That's quite all right, you can have it. I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments? I have one. Maybe
Okay.
you could send the assistant superintendent next
Well,
time.
you know, that
Don't tell her I
doesn't sound
said
like a
that.
bad idea, actually.
All in favor?
Aye. Great, that's all I had, thank you.
Good evening, by the way, everybody, and I wanted to express my appreciation. This will be my first formal meeting as the school business manager for the town of Auburn, and obviously looking forward to many years and many meetings after this. So, but with that being said, we have a handful of information that we're going to be going through. Just, I guess in summary, there's going to be topics that propose information to you, again, for informational purposes, but also for formal details as well. The first report that you'll have in your packet is a summary of budget transfers that we have completed literally through approximately the 25th of June. In doing so, you'll see that a good amount of the first page represents payroll transfers that accounted for potential deficits or minor adjustments back and forth between what we originally had budgeted. The second page pretty much is covering, for the most part, professional development costs that we had included in our expenditures during the last period of the fiscal year. Okay. If you have any questions on that, by all means, feel free to ask. Okay. The second section in your packet is two sections of reports. They represent the year-to-date budget report for the fiscal year that has just, or we're in the process of closing for fiscal year 14. The second report is actually the report showing you what our anticipated budgets for fiscal year 15. Obviously, these budgets were approved by the school committee a couple of months ago, but this just gives you the details as far as what's been appropriated, what costs as of year to date have already been encumbered, or what purchase orders, requisitions, and so forth has been identified for our costs for the current fiscal year as we stand. Jeannie may go through details. I know, again, on both of those reports you've seen in pretty much detail over the past couple of months, but
Any questions? No? Thank you.
okay. One of the next sections I'd like to discuss with you is with the construction of the middle school. We have been submitting monthly reports for the MSBA via our ProPay system. And in doing so, it accomplishes the reporting of what our expenditures are over each monthly reporting period. As you can see on this report, we have completed submissions through June 25th of last month, and it gives you a background back to 2012 when the construction process and planning process phases have actually been completed. In details, that information is readily available upon your request or upon any questions you might have. But again, this is more or less just a summary of what expenditures we have incurred year to date. And you'll see, for the most part, we have submitted approximately $5.8 million worth of costs for the construction of the process. In preparation for future expenditures, you'll see that part of your package is affiliated with the French River Education Center. And this gives you, from a procurement perspective, what some of our co-op vendor lists for potential bids might be. Because it's affiliated with the French River Educational Center, this is a listing of all of the vendors per se that the various towns and cities within the French River program itself would actually have as far as accessible benefits of using for contracts. Rather than having to go individually by town for a contract with each of these respective vendors, we allow ourselves the ability of doing a group contract venture that allows for us to get beneficial rates and so forth for each of these vendors. So you can obviously see from these handouts what vendors those apply to and what details of each of those contracts apply to as well.
We're looking for a motion on, vote on that?
Yes, we are.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve the bids for the custodial, athletic, computer, and school supplies presented by the business office.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Please vote. Thank you.
Also, you'll see that we also have for the food services, also an approved vendor listing that's available. This was compiled from Ms. King, our food service director, and giving us, again, via the French River Collaborative, as also non-food bid options for fiscal year 15. Do I make a motion also request
Yep.
for?
Okay, we'll be looking for a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the food services vendor listing as presented by our business manager that was provided by our food director, food service director.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
It is a vote.
Thank you very much.
And that's it?
That's it for
Policies.
Mr. Harvey, yep.
Well, let's officially welcome Mr. Howard Barber.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've done that yet. We met at a previous meeting, but this is your first official meeting, and I welcome you aboard. Look forward to working with you. And does anyone else have any other comments?
Just about the same. Welcome aboard, and
Yes.
And nice job for your first time out.
I appreciate it.
Very
Thank you
well
very much.
done. We now move on to policies.
Thank you. As we've kept you aware, it was actually part of the Acts of 2012, Chapter 459, relative to fingerprinting and background checks. MASC recently came out with guidance, with model policies on this, which we have included. We updated, Mrs. Ottner updated and put them in the Auburn Public Schools format. So it is my recommendation that you approve these policies as written. But I also did include in here for you, as one of the policy news inserts from MASC, they encourage that there may be some deliberation or discussion by school committee. So what I will share with you, and I'll identify whether or not it's in the policy, but the first one here talks about, basically this goes in line with the Quarry policy, which says that any individual who will have direct or unsupervised or unmonitored contact with children is subject to the Quarry law, which they now complete and has been in existence for a number of years. But now they're adding the federal fingerprint background check as well. There has always been discretion in terms of, so again, it's that direct and unmonitored contact. What it lists here in this first number is volunteers, subcontractors, contracted laborers, or vendors who provide services in the district generally would not have direct or certainly not unmonitored or unmonitored contact with students. So the way that the policy from MASC reads is that, and I'll read it directly here to you, the attached policy grants the superintendent the discretion to make a decision based upon the circumstances presented. And the example they give, that if there was to be an overnight field trip and a non-staff member was to attend that, and I will tell you, the expectation would be that the individual would be subjected to the Quarry as well as the fingerprinting. If, however, it was a volunteer in a classroom where they were going to be with a teacher at all times, I would have the discretion of whether to ask them to do so or not. With the Quarry check, and our standard has been to ask anybody who participates in the Quarry. The fingerprinting check comes with a cost. For teachers, it's $55, and for non-teachers, it's $35 to do that. So, but I will tell you, I will always err on the side of safety and caution for students, that if there's even the possibility of direct or unmonitored contact with students, I would err on the side of safety for them. So that gives me that discretion in this model policy. So you'll need to decide whether you're comfortable with that or if you want to change the policy. The second item clarifies that school committee members, simply because you are a school committee member, you're not subject to having a Quarry and a fingerprint background check. The only issue would be is if you were to go in and have direct or unmonitored contact, you'd be subject to the same as everybody else. But otherwise, just as being a school committee member, you would not be.
Oh, sorry, Wayne.
we have done Quarry checks in the past for a school committee. Does that mean we don't have to do them? Because I have done them.
If you,
Oh, I did it
when
to
we
you.
make visits to schools and things, we would have you do those. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
No, I know I did it before, but
right,
that time I said I was told I
Thi-
had to
this
do
is-
it. I mean, I don't have a problem with doing it.
right.
But, and I did it.
This
But I mean,
is particularly in
you're saying-
response to the fingerprinting piece, because the Quarry, those rules are still gonna stay.
okay.
We're gonna continue to implement that as we always have. This is in regards to the fingerprinting, that simply because you are a school committee member, you don't have to necessarily have that. If you're gonna have the direct unmonitored contact, it's the same rules as applies to everybody else.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Question? So do our substitute teachers now need to be fingerprinted?
Absolutely.
And where do student teachers fall in this?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So they would definitely have that, because we would not be, you know, for a student teacher or a substitute, obviously a substitute would have direct and unmonitored.
Yes,
Even with a student teacher,
at times they do.
there would be times that they would have that direct and unmonitored. Yeah, absolutely. The third item talks about the fees, and as it reads in here, that the attached policy, as well as the law and regulation, places the onus for the fees on the individual. This actually came up, it went before State Auditor Suzanne Bump, and she determined that it was not an unfunded mandate, but just like certification, you're required to have, or a license, you're required to have that, and there's a fee associated with it. MASC strongly recommends that school committees retain that procedure in here and not assume that financial cost, that it's at the cost of the individual, which would be my recommendation too. It would be cost prohibitive, quite honestly, I think, to do it otherwise. And then the final one that they suggested for you for consideration is whether hardship waivers for fees. They don't address it in this policy. If you wanted to allow a waiver for financial hardship, they suggested the administration that I would work with legal counsel to develop an administrative procedure to ensure that there's fairness and equity in that. I don't anticipate that from any of our staff members that would pose an issue. But I do think it's something that we may want to consider. But again, I go back to, you know, if we've got a parent volunteer who's in a classroom and who is not going to have unmonitored contact with students, that's where that discretion comes in of whether they're would have them do the query of whether they're required to do the federal fingerprinting.
I'd entertain a motion. Is that all
That's
good?
it, yes, it is.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Nothing?
Yeah, I have some, with like student teachers, can we pick up the cost for that if it was like a college intern or something? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, that's a decision of the committee to
Yeah.
do. I would, I think the challenge when we make exceptions, and that's obviously an individual who's not working, who's interning for free, you know, I think it can potentially become a slippery slope in terms of where do we stop that. So I think that it's now going to become a norm that student teachers will know that one of the requirements is before they get accepted to do their student teaching, is they'll need to have $55 to be able to do this. So my recommendation would be that we still have them do that and have it be at their own cost. And secondly, MASC has so strongly come out to say, have it stay on the onus, especially where the state auditor ruled that way. So that would be my recommendation.
And if I could add to that, they usually practice teach in various school systems. So if once they're Cory checked and fingerprinted for Auburn, they can then just go to another system. They're all set?
No, Cory
No?
checks
Oh,
need to
no.
go, Cory checks are only for the district in which they are
Okay,
completed.
but they're not paying for that.
They're not paying for that. The fingerprinting, it's interesting in the, yeah, the rule, so you can designate up to 10 districts when you get your fingerprinting
If
done,
you're a
that the results would go to.
substitute or a student intern and you're gonna be in more than one district, you can do up to 10 for the same.
So
cost
for
of
Auburn to
one.
pay for this one person, who then might then take it to
Yeah.
9 other towns.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yep.
I
Now,
would s-
where do they go to have this done?
There's 7 locations, I think, are there? or
They're
7?
opening more and more as time goes on, but you first register online and you determine which
Oh,
place is closest to
go.
your,
Oh, I see.
you know, which is the most easiest for you to get to.
Then this takes effect when?
It
When-
has been it's been ongoing.
So all
since-
of Auburn's teachers as of now need to be?
So what it was this past year, if you were hired during this last school year, you had it done by June 30th, so they're rolling it out.
Oh,
And actually, what they're anticipating, in one of the conference calls we participated in, is having a mobile unit that will go to schools or districts or
Oh.
areas to try and make it more convenient, because they realize that with these sites, and as Mrs. Ottner said, they're adding more, there's an awful lot of educators that
right.
need, never mind subs and all of that.
Current teachers have until June of 2016.
Oh, I see.
Mm.
Maybe like when they do student pictures, they could do teachers all line up and take their turn. You go in and get fingerprinted, then you, and then you.
That might work.
Jeez.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any further questions, jokes, concerns? All in favor?
Hold on,
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Oh, I have one more
Go ahead.
question, actually. What's been the feedback with the fingerprinting? Are the teachers,
Oh, I'm sure they're very happy.
You know, I think that,
On that line.
it's being rolled out slowly. I think that when we sent out the letters to remind everybody of their obligation to do this, it's now part of the new employee packet that they have to do this. I would imagine that there's some grumbling around it. I think it will dissipate fairly quickly, although I suspect,
And we'll do our rollout with our.
yeah, so I think that will probably be the most, because for people, you know, when they change the rules on you midstream, but we're gonna try and make it as convenient as possible, and I think that mobile unit, I think it will be in high demand, but I think it would make sense to have it come, you know, to an area, and it will just expedite things really quickly, so, we have until 2016 to hear about it, so.
Before I take the official vote again, I'm gonna say that the teachers at my school are very excited that they're paying $55 and non-teachers are paying $35, and they're just excited about the whole thing.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right, one more time, all in favor?
And what, you're not here?
Aye.
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 There's a vote. We now move on to job descriptions.
So we realized, this is a position that has been posted, and Mr. Gagnon had drafted this, and we reviewed through it, but it had not come to you for your approval. This is the media iPad integration specialist. So it is my recommendation. As you'll recall, it very much mirrors the teacher one that we built directly off the new EdEval system, but listed in some specifics to which this individual will be held responsible. So it is my recommendation that you approve it.
I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the job description for the iPad media specialist at the Auburn Middle School.
Do I have a
Second
s- Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
all right.
There's a vote.
Great. That's,
And no executive session?
we do not need one, no?
All right, that's fantastic.
I don't need one, no.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.